to say thank you so much for taking out the time out of your day to talk about for this really important topic. This is my heart and one of my biggest passions, and I'm just so excited that you all are here with me today. Can everybody hear me okay? Just to double check. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear okay. Great. All right. Just a couple of things before we start. We will have a time for questions and answers that we will have at the end, and there'll be plenty of time for all that. So just be thinking about your questions, and we will have you type them into the chat box and send them to either me or Leela. And we will make sure that all your questions are answered. And then also, you are on mute, and you'll be on mute throughout this meeting. So just to let you know that is the case. But I think that is it, and I'll hand it over to Leela. Oh, and one more thing. Actually, I'm going to start with the opening prayer for this afternoon. It's called A Prayer for Travelers, and it was written by Angela Herrera, and it's actually used in our program, Faith and Immigration Justice. Let us pray together. This is a prayer for all the travelers, for the ones who start out in beauty, who fall from grace, who step gingerly looking for the way back, and for those who are born into the margins, who travel from one liminal space to another, crossing boundaries in search of a center. This is a prayer for the ones whose births are a passing from darkness to darkness, who all their lives are drawn toward the light and keep moving. And for those whose journeys are a winding road that begins and ends in the same place, though only when the journey is completed do they finally know where they are. For all the travelers, young and old, aching and joyful, weary and full of life, the ones who are here and the ones who are not here, the ones who are like you and they're all like you, and the ones who are different, for in some ways we each travel alone. This is a prayer for traveling mercies and sure-footedness, for clear vision, for bread, for your body and spirit, for water, for your safe arrival, and for everyone you see along the way. Amen.
Thank you, Kristen. My name is Leila Oakley, and I'm the Outreach and Engagement Associate with JustFaith Ministries, and I'm glad to be here with you all today. As we have started to do on these calls, I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and if you're willing to send me your answers in the chat, that would be great. We just like to get a feel for who's on the call, what your experience with JustFaith Ministries is, so that we can better know you and better offer the correct information to you. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind sending me information about whether or not you have ever participated in a JustFaith Ministries program. Doesn't matter if it was last year or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So send me a note saying yes or no and how many programs you've participated in. And then if you would also send me a note that's even in the same note that says what your interest is in today. If you're interested in possibly facilitating this program, possibly participating in this program, or if you're just here to learn more and want to learn more and then reevaluate after you know more. So go ahead and send those to me in the chat. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation.
All right. So this is just a little bit about us for those of you who are new to JustFaith Ministries. As this slide says, we seek to provide folks this space to create community and to grow spiritually and to be equipped and prepared to seek justice in whatever form that you feel called to do. We actually offer these programs that folks will facilitate in their own communities, and we write these programs so that anyone can facilitate. You don't have to be a clergy person. You don't have to be an expert in the topic, and you don't have to have a prior experience facilitating conversations. So we provide you all the materials and support that you need to facilitate our programs in your own communities. And we'll talk about a little bit later in the ways that you can do that virtually or in person. Just so you know, today's focus is on faith and immigration justice. But just so you know, we also offer some other programs. The Just Faith series focuses on poverty, helping to alleviate poverty in our local communities and standing in solidarity with those experiencing poverty. We also have a Catholic version, and an ecumenical version of this program. We have a racial justice series. There are 3 of them. Each of them are 8 weeks. We have youth program and on a wide variety of justice topics. We have Just Engagement, which seeks to equip people to engage in advocacy and grassroots organizing around whatever topic they feel called to be involved in. We have Engaging Spirituality, which grounds people in their faith and in spirituality and contemplative practices so that they can go out and seek justice even more effectively. We have Hunger, Faith and Justice response on hunger. The topic that we'll talk about today is faith and immigration justice. We have a program on nonviolence, and we have our Eco Justice series. The first program of that, which is called Sacred Land, Faith and Farming, was just released this fall, and we're looking forward to offering Sacred Air on climate and energy, and then Sacred Water, which will be on, of course, on water. And so that is all of our topics, and feel free to visit our website to learn more about those. So a little bit about faith and immigration justice just as a whole. It equips participants to advocate for immigration policies that are just, effective, and compassionate, and to lead their communities in extending hospitality toward their immigrant neighbors. And so this program, it seeks to help people to address some of those misconceptions about immigration and also it talks about, the premise of this program is how our Christian faith calls us to respond to immigrants living in our communities and to immigration policy. You'll hear stories and read stories from immigrants. You'll explore current topics such as the border wall, DACA, TPS, border security. And there will also be this program is heavily action-based. So throughout this program, you will be discerning how you are called to act both as an individual and as a group to both welcome our immigrant neighbors and to welcome our immigrant neighbors and also advocate for fair and just immigration policy. A few other things about this program too. You might be familiar with our previous programs on migration. Was previously called Exploring Migration, and before that, Border Crossings. And this program maintains some similar elements, such as some of the prayers are similar, and there's some materials that are similar. But just some differences include that this program is really up to date with our current reality. There's a greater emphasis on how we get involved in action around this issue. And there's also a more specific focus on immigration, people coming from Latin America across our southern border. And the reason that we did that instead of our previous programs focused more on migration in general. A reason for this focus is because we found that it's easier to do one thing and to do it really well. And that having that specific focus allows us to do that. And also because we believe that understanding this specific issue within the topic of migration helps us to better understand migration as a whole. So that's one of the reasons why we're zooming in here. Another thing that's really important to note about this program was that we developed this with the partnership of the Office of Social Justice from the Christian Reformed Church has provided some great simulations that we've been able to incorporate. They're just fantastic and very knowledgeable about this issue. Also, Bread for the World is our core partner in all of our programs. And Mary Knoll, from the very beginning, the resources such as the prayers that are included in this were contributed, most of them were contributed by Mary Knoll. And so now I'm just going to take you through the sessions themselves so you can just get a better idea of what this program is about and what is in the content. So session 1 is the introductory session when folks get to know each other. We go over some community of trust guidelines to introduce folks to the topic of holy conversation, which they'll practice throughout the program. Many of our programs touch on very controversial issues, including this one. And our ideal audience is a group that contains a variety of perspectives on this issue. And so this introduction to holy conversation allows us to really hear one another and to receive new and different perspectives with openness and grace and humility. And so this introductory session is really important in that way. And then the second half of the session, this is our theological introduction to the program. And so while theology is woven throughout, this is the theological basis here from the beginning in session 1. We go through an overview of what the Bible has to say about migration. And then we zoom in on the story of Ruth and Naomi. And then we finish with looking at some church statements and what the different denominations have to say about immigration and what their policies and perspectives are. The second session is on the history of immigration to the United States. And this is really important because in order to move forward in creating laws that are just and compassionate, we have to understand our past first. And so we use a timeline exercise, which was originally developed by the Office of Social Justice of the Christian Reformed Church. And this timeline exercise helps us to recognize the patterns among the fears and the hopes and the values in our past that has shaped immigration laws. So for example, a question that is really, that is addressed and participants will explore is you often hear, my grandparents came here legally, why can't others do the same? And so we'll explore this question and how immigration policy has changed and how it has tended to prioritize certain people groups over others. Session 3 is a simulation on current immigration policies and processes. And so in this simulation, each person, and virtually it's a little bit different, but each person will get a card that has the real story of an immigrant. And you'll kind of walk through the citizenship process in order to kind of understand how our current citizenship process works. And folks will tend to be very surprised at how complicated and complex this process is, and often how difficult it is to become a citizen. And so it explores one of those common misconceptions when people tend to ask, well, why don't undocumented immigrants just get in line? And so people will walk away better understanding why this is not possible for many folks. Session 4, this is a 2-part on why do people migrate. And so one way of thinking about migration and the reasons for migration are push factors, which push people out of their country of origin, and pull factors, the United States pulling in some ways for different motivations, folks to the United States. And so in session 4, you will watch a documentary on some reasons why people leave their home countries. And this documentary in particular will focus on some of the international policies and interventions that have pushed people out of their home countries. And then in session 5, you will spend the first part of session 5 hearing from a guest speaker. And we think that this is really important because the guest speaker allows folks to get connected with someone who is already at work on this issue. And this can also be an opportunity to possibly hear from someone who has gone through the citizenship process or who is undocumented, and to really hear some stories about what that is like. And then during the second half of that session, this is the second part, we'll take some time to digest the reasons why people, the push-pull factors that have been discussed. So there'll be an interactive activity on the push and pull factors about why people migrate to the United States. Session 6 is on current issues in migrations. And so in preparation for this session, participants will have been assigned a topic around a current issue in migration. And so some examples are DACA, family separations, immigration and COVID-19, And so they will have researched a specific topic. And then during that session, the participants will gather together with people in small groups who research that same topic, and they'll prepare a presentation for the group as a whole. And so this really allows folks to hone in on things that are particularly interesting and important to them around this topic of migration, and also address, we inevitably have to write this program and release it at a certain place and time. And so this allows for when our immigration policies and procedures do change and there are current events happening with migration. This allows for participants to address some of those topics. And then after that, you have your immersion experience in the local community. And so this will be an opportunity to, again, meet with some folks who are already involved in this work. Some examples of immersion experiences might be to visit a church where immigrants tend to worship, maybe worship in a different language. It is incredibly powerful to do if you haven't done that before. You can visit a center where immigrants tend to come and receive services, or there's a solidarity network in your area, or like a sanctuary program is something interesting to explore. Or you can attend an organizing meeting or a webinar around immigration policy that, especially considering the way that video conferencing has opened up really the whole world to us. There's so many different ways in which you can even do this virtually. Then session 7 is on advocating for change. And so this session will begin with exploring how advocacy connects with our faith, because sometimes that's a new thing for folks to understand how faith and advocacy and organizing connect. And then we'll explore some ways to engage in advocacy and organizing. So for example, ending mass incarceration relating to immigration. Folks will be connected with a group who does that so that they can get plugged in. Or helping your city to officially become a welcoming community. They'll be connected with folks who can provide them tools and consulting for doing that. Or just a simple introduction to a group who sends out action alerts for calling the representatives when a major event related to immigration comes up. So hopefully folks will find that there's a way for them to get involved no matter what their time constraints are or what their life looks like. And then our last session, session 8, is on discerning individual and small group action steps. And so together, participants will make a plan of what their action steps will be, both individually and as a small group together. They'll name their first steps that they will take, and they will develop a plan for accountability to one another so that they can be sure to follow up with one another as well. And then just some other components to this program in general. All of our programs are grounded in prayer. There are spiritual practices between sessions. All of our programs begin and end with prayer. Also, the holy conversation, as I discussed, this allows us to talk about this very important and yet controversial issue that is often ripe with tension in a way that, can really be an act of worship in some ways. In this program, there's a few different simulations and small group activities, which are really important to this program. There's practical tools for organizing and advocacy, and of course the immersion and the guest speaker are both really important because we think that actually meeting the people involved in this work, or people who have been through the immigration process themselves, this will up the chances that participants will actually get involved and take action following session 8. Just the resources that we use. You'll notice the books are different. If you've taken Exploring Migration, the books are different. Welcoming the Stranger is one of the books, and this book really just gives some basic information and important information around immigration, helping to dispel some myths around our immigration process. I really love it, particularly because it was written by a couple of folks who come from an evangelical and more conservative background, which I think is really important because hopefully coming to the table will be people who are both more conservative and more progressive on this issue. And I think that Welcoming the Stranger provides that a more theologically and politically conservative perspective, while also arguing for justice or exposing participants to one way of, or actually even multiple ways of immigration policy that is both effective and compassionate. And then the second book is called The Line Becomes a River by Francisco Cantu. And this is a story-based book. It's very readable, and it's actually the memoir of a Border Patrol agent. And so it's just a really lovely book, and he brings into the picture the stories of immigrants who he has met in his work. And I think it's really moving. And then, of course, there's articles that folks will read between the sessions as well. So you'll read about Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. You'll get a little taste of liberation theology. You'll read about like Romans 13 and the relationship between government and faith and explore that question. You'll read about Our Lady of Guadalupe. You'll learn about the refugee screening process. And so these articles are really central to this program as well. And then, of course, we also incorporate videos within the sessions so that you can hear from people who share their stories, and these videos can introduce people for tools for action so they can see ways that people are already engaged in advocacy across the country. And so now I'll just turn it over to Leela to tell a little bit about what to expect from this program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. So I have outlined just some general information about what to expect with this program, but also with all of the Just Faith Ministries programs. So all of our programming is available to be done in a virtual and an in-person format. So if you are gathering with folks in your small group via Zoom or in your church, it can be done both ways. And we have support available to folks who are navigating the virtual space, and training available to facilitators to help them do that well. This program is 8 sessions in length, and all of our programs are 8 sessions in length. Some of them have a retreat. Not all of our programs have a retreat. And then all of our programs have the opportunity for an immersion experience that Kristen spoke to earlier. These programs are designed for a small group. So they are designed for in-person between 8 and 15 participants, for virtual 8 and 12. And the reason that we have encouraged a smaller group for virtual is so that the time together is divided among, the time sharing is divided among fewer participants, which allows for people to have a longer amount of time to share, to process, to hear from one another. And also, if you've been in a small group over Zoom or another video conferencing platform, it's really helpful if it's a little bit smaller to enhance the feeling of connection. Even something as small as how big or small a person's face is in the display format can do a lot in how well you can connect in a virtual setting. For our in-person programs, we have written those sessions to be 2.5 hours in length. But for our virtual programs, we encourage folks to meet for 2 hours, just to keep from any Zoom fatigue or video conferencing fatigue. We found that the 2-hour sessions is much more manageable for folks. And then finally, as Kristen referred to in her presentation, there are weekly assignments. So between sessions, you have reading from the texts that are assigned for the books. You might have an article or a video, a spiritual practice that you're engaging with. And so between sessions, participants should expect to spend between maybe 45 minutes to an hour engaging with that material to come prepared to share and learn from their fellow participants. I quickly put up a session outline, and this is by no means what every single session looks like, but this is a general outline to show you what you can expect on a typical session meeting. You're going to begin with an opening prayer or meditation. There'll be a big chunk of time for conversation. It might be around a video or an activity or an exercise that's in the session. There's time for a break, announcements, and then another big chunk of conversation time around the reading that was done for that week. So time to really learn from one another about the wisdom that was gained from the reading that week. And then, as Kristen said before, we always close each session with prayer. Now, just a few logistics. So kind of where to go from here. If you are interested in learning more about any one of our programs, you can do that on our website. If you are looking to register for a program, so let's say you really want to move forward with this program in your community, you would go to our website to register. The program costs $175. Now that is a group rate. So that $175 is paid once and gives the group access to that program for an entire year. And typically what happens is the organization, whether that's the church or the parish or a nonprofit, would cover the cost of that registration fee. And then participants would be responsible for the cost of their books, but that's up for every small group to negotiate how they want to handle that registration fee. I will just add a little note that within the next year, probably realistically a year from now, we will have a new registration model, but for the remainder of this year and into the beginning of next year, this is what our registration process looks like. As I said earlier, the gathering format is something that needs to be figured out. For many of us right now, online is the only format that is safe and realistic, but discerning which is the best format for your small group is something to keep in mind. Once you've registered, identified the format, you then begin the process of discerning facilitators. So we encourage each small group to have 2 facilitators, and these facilitators are not topic experts. They are not necessarily educators or not necessarily formally trained facilitators. These are 2 individuals who are willing to take the time to use the resources that we provide to facilitate the program, to gather together the small group, to promote the small group, to lead the individual sessions. And we've given all of the written material available, written support necessary to do that and to do that well. And then I'm also available for one-on-one training and support along the way. And last but not least, once you've identified facilitators, you can select a start date, begin the recruitment process, and hit the ground running. On our website, we have promotion kits, which are really helpful for the recruitment process. And those are free to download from our website. So if you want to look at those resources, you can do that and use that as you begin to recruit participants to the process. So with that, I will stop sharing and we will enter into a time of Q&A. So if you have any questions about anything we've just shared or something maybe that we didn't get to, feel free to shoot that over to either of us in the chat and we will read the questions aloud and do our best to answer them for you. A question about whether or not it is possible to get connected with a national small group. So is JustFaith Ministries as an organization pulling together small groups for this program? And I'll go ahead and answer that one, Kristen. So right now, JustFaith Ministries does not have the capacity to facilitate small groups out of our office. Our goal in the next year is we're going to be redoing our website. And in that redo, we will be able to develop the mechanisms necessary to facilitate small groups out of our office, which means if Paula is in Texas and she doesn't have a group of folks to do this program with, but she's really interested in it, she could go on our website, look up the program, look up for virtual or local in-person options, and get connected with a small group to do the program. So that is coming. Hopefully within the year, we'll be able to make that available. But for now, it is up to kind of people on the ground to gather together folks who are interested in the program and identify facilitators and get it going in their local community. Kristen, here's a good question for you. Someone asked about the documentary used in the program. So I don't know if you want to speak to maybe some of the video resources that are used in the program.
Sure. The documentary is called Harvest of Empire. And I can't, sadly, I can't name off the top of my head exactly what the other ones are, but there's just a wide variety of other films as well, or short films, I'll say that just both provide the stories of folks who have been through the immigration process and the challenges they face, and then also videos about immigration in general and specific issues related to that, and also ways that people are taking action. But yes, that documentary is called Harvest of Empire.
Kristen, is the material available in Spanish?
I wish that it were. I really wish it were. That is not currently, and it would be a little tough to swing it. The Lima Comes a River is available in Spanish, but Welcoming the Stranger is not. So it would just be tough to adapt it in Spanish on your own. And eventually, I'd love to hire someone or contract someone to help us translate. Yeah.
Someone has asked about, has indicated that they would have a trouble organizing a group on their own, but is wondering if there's a group that they could join just as a participant. So again, to speak to that, right now we do not formally start groups from our office or put people into groups just because of our website limitations and our staff limitations. But within the next year, our goal is to be able to do that. So in some ways, just hang on a little while and then we'll be able to do that for you. But in the meantime, what you can do is you can shoot me an email and I will happily just hold on to your name. And if an option comes up where I know of a small group starting this program who has space, I could reach out to them, ask if they'd be willing to let someone join their group from outside their community and do it informally. But as I said earlier, we don't have a formalized process for that right now.
I'll say too, just I know this is a challenge, but if I had a challenge, it would be just take a risk and reach out to people that even if it's like old friends from Facebook from college, or someone that you've seen post about immigration on social media, or a family member. Reach out to folks and ask them to join. And it's really, we're here to support you in facilitating. Find someone who would be willing to help out and lend their time, and that's all you need. I know it's a big ask, but I guess if there's, that would be my challenge so that we can collectively reach even more people to talk about this really important issue.
Someone has asked about, Kristen, about purchasing the Line Across the River book. So whether or not they have to register for the program to purchase that book from JustFaith Ministries, or if they should seek it out from a different vendor.
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm sure we would be happy to send that to you, and I'll type in here in a second the link to the bookstore. You can email and that. It also just is also just available through other sources as well. But we always appreciate supporting the bookstore.
I'm going to put my email and Kristen's email into the chat for everyone. It is just our first names at justfaith.org, but I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. And I will want to let you all know that I will be sending out a follow-up email that has the recording of our presentation as well as a PDF of our slides. So that way, if you have someone who wants to learn a little bit more, you can easily share those with them so that they can gain a better understanding of the program content.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I know that you being here means that you care about immigration issues, and just know that we are in solidarity with you in that, and that we are here to support you, whether or not it is through our program. So thank you.